Hi, Destiny. Thanks for waiting. Sorry, had some technical difficulties.
You're fine, no worries. Lovely to meet you.
You too. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So I saw your profile and I am currently booked in for my first ever smear. I've never had one before. And I feel like I don't know much about the smear or cervical cancer, and it's something that's really important, but yeah, I'm not educated on it at all. So that's why I thought it'd be great for us to chat so you can kind of tell me about your story and
Of
just
course.
kind of open my mind to it a bit more because I don't really know much. Bar that at school I had a jab for cervical cancer, and that's all I've ever heard about it in my life.
So that is exactly the same as me. Until all of this happened to me, I was exactly the same as you. I had the jab at school,
Hmm.
and it was explained to me that it was something to do with cervical cancer and it would help stop you from getting it when you're older. And
Hmm.
prior to me being diagnosed myself, my only knowledge of cervical cancer was Jade Goody, which obviously wasn't a great example. So I totally feel the same, that I really knew nothing about it. And I'm actually a cancer nurse myself.
Oh, okay.
So to put on top of it, I still didn't know much about it, even though I'm a cancer nurse. So I think it's definitely something that needs to be talked about at school, education, definitely, and how important it is to attend the routine smears when you are offered it.
100%. I feel like, yeah, I had the jab done at school, but then they don't really tell you anything. They just say, you need to have this. This is for cervical cancer, bish bash bosh, go to your lesson kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I know from other people I've spoken to, especially younger people, that they believe that because you've had the jab, it means you cannot get cervical cancer. However, that is not the case. So I think yet again it is a lot about education. So we've all put ourselves forward to, or we've all agreed to have the jabs, but actually we still need to attend our regular screening, because even though it lowers our chances, like I said, I had the jab at school and I've then gone on to develop cervical cancer not once, but twice, even with the jab.
Yeah, that's mind blowing in a way, just to the fact that it must have been so upsetting and heartbreaking and just world crushing finding out once, but then to get it again must have been like unbelievable.
Yeah. So for me, I'd only ever had one routine smear at 25. So I think I got the letter, usually get the letter a couple of months before you are due to turn 25. I remember even at that time sort of saying to my mum, like, "Oh, do I need to go for this?" And she was like, "Yeah, you need to go." And I was like, "Oh, well, I've had exactly the same. I've had the jab at school." Like, and yet again, I heard other older friends who had gone for it, and there was some horror stories. And instantly I thought, I really don't want to go for this. However, I attended. It really wasn't anything as bad as what I thought it was going to be. Um, and within a few weeks, I had a letter to say that the results were normal and that I would be recalled in 3 years. So actually, my only normal, or my only first experience, was actually completely normal. There was no abnormal cells reported. And like I said, it really wasn't as bad. I just remember thinking, I'm only 25. Why would this happen to me? Yet again, I remember thinking to myself, cervical cancer is something that older women get. I don't know why I thought that, but that's what I thought.
Yeah. I think it's the unknown, isn't it? That's the
It
only thing.
is.
Like, you don't know anything, so you just presume. And I think especially the younger you are, the more invincible you feel. Like,
Absolutely.
you don't believe it's gonna happen to you, so it's very easy to have that mindset.
Absolutely, especially if you do lead a really like, if you're fit and healthy. I mean, when I was 27 when I was first diagnosed with cervical cancer. I was due to have my second routine smear, um, just as I turned 28. However, because of the lockdown, the GP surgery cancelled it. So I it would have been picked up at that smear had I had been able to attend. However, yet again, I remember the GP receptionist ringing me up to cancel my smear and said, her words were, you're in the low risk category. You're young, you're fit, you're healthy, you've had no abnormal cells, but previously you've had no problems. So there's no reason that we need to put you at risk of coming into a GP surgery during COVID when you have no risk. Because I remember her exact words that you're too young.
Yeah.
So then for 3 months prior to 3 months after that, sorry, to then have a diagnosis of cervical cancer and needing to then have chemotherapy and radiation was literally heartbreaking for me.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially because it was at your fingertips, like they're having the smear, and then for it to be like taken
Absolutely.
away from you without your own, without a choice, really. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think I kick myself now looking back because the symptoms I was displaying was very clearly the cervical cancer symptoms. However, I didn't know that. So I put it down to a lot of other things. Even when I spoke to GPs on the phone, yet again, because of my age, they said abnormal bleeding, probably your stress, your hormones, your diet, anything but cervical cancer. So yet again, now looking back, if only I had known that I was actually displaying symptoms of cervical cancer, it would have been picked up a lot sooner. But because I didn't know the symptoms, and that is coming from somebody who is a cancer nurse, I
Yeah.
didn't know the symptoms to look out for.
Yeah. So what were your symptoms then? What made you think something's wrong?
So my symptoms were started off with bleeding after sex.
Mm.
Um, it then went on to just abnormal. So this was about 6 months prior to me being diagnosed. It then went on to bleeding in between periods, and that's when I then spoke to my GP about it. So yet again over the telephone, and they said it sounds hormonal. You've been on the same contraception for like 10 years. It might just be that you need to change it. It wasn't until about 3 4 months down the line that I then started having really watery discharge, which yet again was extremely abnormal for me. However, we went down the route of it was some sort of infection. So we did all the screening and everything. That all came back negative, and they just literally put it down to I'm a nurse working through COVID, doing lots of long shifts. I'm extremely stressed, and we just put it down to stress basically. So they are the three really key, like main signs of cervical cancer is the abnormal bleeding, so bleeding in between periods, the bleeding after sex, any unusual discharge, so whatever that might be abnormal for you, and then the last one was the pelvic and hip pain, which I didn't develop that until really late on. However, I did have that symptom, and I
Yeah.
just didn't know. I just put it down to be yet again being a very active, healthy person, working over hard in the gym, working hard in my job. I just didn't know. And if I had put them all together, I could have pushed to be seen sooner.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to use the word stress, because I know when I something feels different for me, I go, it must just because I'm stressed. Just because it
Yeah,
feels, just because something feels different, you automatically just think, oh, it's because something's happened. Like I just feel too
yeah,
overwhelmed with it or something. So I can see why that word gets used a lot, because you just presume it is because your life's so
yeah.
busy.
And I think a lot of the women that I also speak to, um, like exactly like you said, when something changes, you usually put it down to your own hormones. And prime example is the amount of women I speak to who were diagnosed with cervical cancer quite quickly, or 3 to 6 months post giving birth.
Mhm.
They had symptoms and they were all put down to the birthing process.
Yeah.
It was just your hormones settling afterwards. And I think that is why I was so keen to talk to you, because I know that, yet again, women that have had children quite close to when they're then being diagnosed, they went, oh, but surely they would have seen something during childbirth, or surely all them checks I've had, they would have seen something. And that is not always the case. So yet again, women quite often will say, oh, well, I had a baby 6 months ago. My periods have never gone back to normal. I've had this bleeding. And they've just put it down to that. Whereas actually, yet again, if they had been seen sooner, then, and like you say, they just don't put two and two together, really.
Yeah, of course, and especially like in when you're giving birth or your checks, I guess being checked by a midwife wouldn't look out for that. It's not their kind of
No,
expertise, so they would probably say, "Oh, it's just the labour," or "It's just the hormones," like you
absolutely.
say. So
Exactly. Yeah.
after your symptoms then, how long after you started having your symptoms, when did you go see someone and they told you obviously the sad news?
So from when I first remember displaying symptoms to finally being seen in person was about 5 months. Which yet again, because of this, it was in 2020, we had just gone down in like just gone into a lockdown. It
Mm,
was really difficult. I actually had to take myself into A&E, which yet again, I felt completely stupid going into A&E during a global pandemic,
mhm.
saying, I've got vaginal bleeding that literally won't stop. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't yet again, even at that stage, I thought something quite serious was happening, but I never thought for a minute it was going to be cancer. They saw me in A&E within sort of half an hour because there was no one in there because we were all told to stay away from hospitals. And I just remember the doctor examining me and saying to me, "You have a tumor the size of a tennis ball in your cervix, and how has this not been seen sooner?" And I said to her, "It's not been seen sooner because I haven't seen anyone face to face. All my all the conversation I've had with doctors have been over telephone because of the whole COVID situation." And everything from that point, that was beginning of June, everything from that point happened very quickly, all my scans and tests and everything. And exactly 3 weeks after I went to A&E, I was given my official diagnosis and my treatment plan. And I just remember hearing the word chemo. And the first thing I said to the doctor was, am I going to lose my hair? Because I don't want to lose my hair.
I would ask the same. I know that
Yeah.
I think for a woman especially,
Yeah.
hair is a lot. Some people
It,
maybe not, but like I think that would be the first thing because as soon as you hear chemo, you do think like
yes.
my friend lost her hair and it was like
Yeah.
devastating for her.
It
So
was, yeah.
that'd be my first question as well.
Yeah, and yet again, now looking back on everything else I've now had to go through, now thinking that was my main concern, my hair. I didn't want to say, will I die?
Yeah.
I didn't, my main concern was, will I lose my hair? I absolutely, like I said, I love my hair. It's my identity. And obviously that was my main concern. And then it went on to treatment. So, like I said, I had to have chemotherapy, radiation, which then, unfortunately for me, meant that I wouldn't be able to go on to have children, and I didn't have the time scale to preserve my fertility, and that's another thing as well that I think being slightly younger. I was only 27. I hadn't had children. Um, I was, had other things going on. So I didn't get the option of going down the preservation route. So that was something that I've had to obviously come to terms with, and it's very hard. I mean, I'm a children's nurse, so I'm surrounded by children all day. I absolutely adore children, but it was just something that we didn't have time to do. So yet again, if I'd been diagnosed 5 months previous, when I was due for my smear, it could have given me, I was still going to have cancer, but
Yeah.
it would have given me time to at least view my options on fertility, whereas that was taken away from me.
So sorry. I feel like to say how much you've gone through and we've only been speaking like not very long. You're such a positive person. Like you're still smiling. I feel like
Yeah,
which is good. I feel like that's just such a good output
yeah,
to be, if that makes sense.
absolutely. You've got to be. I mean, I've always been quite a positive person anyway, but then going through what I've gone through has made me even more appreciative. And I always say this. I don't know why this has happened to me, but it happened to me for a reason, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. So I just kind of try and use it exactly like we're doing now. I try and use my own experience to raise awareness because, like I said, I knew nothing about cervical cancer. And if only I had known, I might have been able to have done something sooner. So that's what I try and bring out of this whole situation, is that I try and speak out about it as much as possible because I want people to see that it can literally happen to anyone. Like I said, not only am I younger, fit, healthy, I go to the gym, I don't smoke, my risk factors were extremely low. And on top of that, I'm a cancer nurse myself. So for it to happen to me goes to show it can really happen to anyone.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So on my social media, I've got 96% female following. So I feel
Yes.
like that is why I want to talk about it and push it as much as I possibly
Yes.
can, because that is a huge majority of women that
Yes.
may miss their smears or may don't want to go. And I just think speaking to you will hopefully encourage people to be like, oh, maybe I should just get that checked, or
Get
maybe I
it
should,
checked.
yeah, like, oh, I won't leave that letter laying around. Let me just get it booked in.
And like I said, it's like anything. Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, "Yes, I cannot wait to go and have my smear done." No one wants it done. But in all honesty, and 99% of the people I speak to who go for their first one, they all come out there and go, "Oh, that wasn't nearly as bad as what I thought it was going to be." Yes, there may be one or two people that have had a negative experience, but overall, most people come out of that and go, "Oh, it really wasn't that bad. Why was I worried? Why was I stressed?" And actually, the consequences is a million times worse. And I can assure anyone that. And if anyone doesn't believe me, they can come and speak to me, because the things I've had to go through, I would take a smear a day every single day over what I've gone through. So, yet again, if only, more people spoke about it. And like I said, I just feel like it's one of them subjects where people sort of like get embarrassed about it. They don't want to talk to their friends, their family members about it. It's something that, yet again, in the workplace, no one wants to say, "Oh, I need to have the afternoon off because I need to go for a smear." Like, no one seems to talk about it, but I don't understand why, because it's such a normal thing for women to go for.
Yeah, it feels like sometimes it's like a bit of a taboo subject.
Absolutely.
People don't want to tread on that area. Whereas
Yeah.
like I think because I've like had my coil changed, like I've been in a situation where I've had my legs and
Yeah.
stuff. I think I'm not that bothered now. Do you know what I mean?
No,
Like I just think for something that will take 10 minutes of my day,
absolutely.
worth it. And I just think even if it's uncomfortable, like there's worse scenarios in life. Do you know what I mean? Than feeling someone
Absolutely.
looking down below and swabbing your bits for 10 minutes. It's really not that
And
big.
it really doesn't even take that long. And actually, what then comes out of it is the testing system has changed since I first had my smear test. So I do appreciate, obviously, I get a lot of questions of people saying, "Did you have HPV?" And I always say it wasn't tested back then. We looked for abnormal cells first, and then once the abnormal cells were found, you had further testing. Because I didn't have any abnormal cells shown, there was nothing to test.
Okay.
Whereas now they test for HPV first.
Mhm.
If that comes back positive, then you get called up for a second appointment in a specialist clinic, which is colposcopy, which is where they take a more in-depth look. That doesn't mean, and that's another thing I always try and make it clear to people, that people will contact me and say, "Oh my God, they found HPV. That means I've got cancer." First of all, no, it doesn't. 9 out of 10 of us will have HPV once in our life. It's a normal virus and our body normally clears it.
Yeah.
It only becomes problematic when it's one of the strains that can turn into cervical cancer, and it then starts changing the cells. So when you then get that call, so when you get that letter and it just says your test came back positive for HPV, you'll be called up for a further appointment. I think at that stage, that's when people freak out and they go, "Oh my God." That, I would say, I think Joe's Trust said about 6 out of 10 women now get called up for that second appointment. That second appointment is just a closer look.
Yeah.
They have a more specialized department, a more specialized kit. It's no different. It's not any more painful. And I have been for one of them before.
Mhm.
And I actually filmed my experience of doing it,
That's
because I've got so many questions of people saying to me, like, "What's this like? Oh, I don't want to go for it, blah, blah, blah." So
yeah.
yeah, so then the next, and yet again, I think that's another really crucial thing, is not understanding. So some people might get that letter, freak out, and then not go for their follow-up appointment because they just can't face the thought of what they might get told. But actually then going on to that following appointment, if you are then just got HPV but with no abnormal cells, you're left for another year and you go on, do your own thing. If, and hopefully your body just clears the HPV. If the closer look shows abnormal cells. There are several treatment options, which yet again are not painful. They just take slightly longer. They usually do it there and then, to remove the abnormal cells. And then you're followed up a year later for a checkup to
Mhm.
make sure that all the abnormal cells were gone. So yet again, it's a process that actually, if it's caught early enough, it is very preventable. It's very treatable, rather than leaving it, putting it off, and then by the time you've gone past the abnormal cells and it's grown into a solid tumor, then your treatment becomes very more invasive, and that's where it becomes life changing.
Since even doing the research that I'm doing at the minute, I didn't even know HPV was a thing. Like, I'd never even I'd heard of cervical cancer, of course, but I'd never heard of that at all. So I was like,
Yeah.
"What is this? I don't understand." And it's something that it's like, why are we not taught this?
Why are we not taught this? And yet again, since being very, so I decided to do my Instagram page very early on of my treatment. And I remember one of the first women that spoke out, like, messaged me. She said to me, I've got the same as you, but I haven't told anyone, not even my husband, because it was caused by an STI.
Oh
And
my,
I was like, pardon? And she was like, yeah, HPV is an STI, and my husband will think I've cheated on him, so I can't even tell him I've got cancer. How heartbreaking is that?
that is
So I literally was like, oh my God, I need to educate people. I need to let people know that it's it's not a sexually transmitted infection. It is passed through sexual contact. However, HPV can be passed through just kissing alone,
yeah. When I
through
looked,
mouth to mouth. So you don't actually need to have physical intercourse with somebody to pass on the HPV virus. So yet again, the education, but I didn't know any of this until all of this happened to me. And I was like, oh, like I was getting like DMs of people saying to me like, oh, you seem like proud about the fact that you've got an STI. And I was like, what? I've not said that. It was a shock to me. So
that,
to then go away and do my own research, and like I said, somebody that has never actually had physical sexual intercourse with somebody, has maybe just kissed somebody, could potentially be infected with HPV from somebody, but it's not,
it's
it's,
not.
it's only been passed on through bodily contact.
Yeah, that's absolutely mind blowing that even someone would think that. Like, even when I read it online, that wasn't my thought at all. I didn't even think about an STI. I just thought of a
Yeah,
virus. When I think of a virus, I just think of like you get a virus. Like, there's lots of different types of
yeah,
viruses. I never thought of like.
absolutely.
I never instantly thought, oh, must be an STI. Like, that's crazy to me that
Yeah,
people presume that. But then that's the
and
problem
yeah,
about it. People aren't educated, so people just presume.
exactly. And I think yet again, maybe that is why some women don't want to go for their smear, because they may think that it's something to do with like a way of detecting sexually transmitted diseases. It would then imply to a partner that you've been unfaithful. It's absolutely nothing to do with that, and they're completely like separate. So yet again, it's just all about education. But like I said, I'd never even heard of HPV until I was diagnosed. And it was one of the first questions I got asked. And I was like, I don't know. So, yet again, I had to go away and do all my own research. And since being in this little bubble, I've learned so much. And like I said, that's why I'm so passionate about telling people, because I didn't know anything, I didn't even know any of this existed. So, for somebody to literally be facing cancer treatment alone because she was too embarrassed to tell her husband, because she was fearful that her husband would think she's cheated on, that she had cheated. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Oh, that's heartbreaking, especially
Yeah,
like just heartbreaking to find out that you've got cervical cancer, but then even more heartbreaking that you're doing it alone. Like,
alone.
that must be such an important aspect of it is having a support system around you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't have done it without my support system.
Yeah.
So this, and I mean, yeah, that's not an isolated person that thinks that. There are, it's a big problem. There's a lot of stigma that is associated with HPV. And yeah, I think obviously it's crucial to know that it's not an STI, does not mean you've been unfaithful. And actually, it can be dormant in your body for up to 10 years. So, yet again, that's, the other thing is people say, oh, well, it must have come from my partner who gave it to me. it doesn't necessarily mean that you might have contracted it 10 years prior. So, all these things, why aren't we taught this at school during sex education?
Yeah, I was about to say that, like, we're taught other things, but we're not taught about really important things in my
Really
eyes.
important things.
Like, we're
Yeah,
taught how to put a condom on, do you know what I mean? But we're not taught
yeah,
about could potentially completely change your life. That
absolutely. And even more important, I think, even if they don't feel that it can be fitted into the like sex education, like you said, they're giving the HPV vaccination to boys and girls now. So they're giving them to everyone at school. During that time, I don't think it's good enough that we just say it's a HPV vaccine, it will help prevent this type of cancer in the future. We need to educate what that exactly means. So whether that be an outside person comes in and just educates, because like you say, we're willingly having a vaccination for
yeah.
something that we don't actually know what we're being vaccinated against.
And like you say, since having when I had mine done, I've not actually thought about it at all till I got that letter.
Yeah,
I got the letter and then I was like, "Oh, yeah," and then my brain started ticking and was like, "I actually had a jab for that." Like, you just forget.
absolutely. And I've I think myself and many other people kind of feel the same. If you had been vaccinated against something, why would you then feel that you need to go and have a test for something 9 years down the line or whenever it might be? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think it's yet again, it's just the lack of education and lack of awareness of when we're actually given this vaccine.
So after you found out you had your chemo and radiation, what else happened in your journey?
So I had treatment for 3 months. It was really, really tough going. I had all my treatment during lockdown, so I had to go to every appointment by myself. My poor mum had to sit outside in the car the whole time. So that was a challenge within itself. However, everyone who was having treatment was in the same boat. I was really fortunate that I was given something called scalp cooling, so I didn't lose my hair. So
Oh,
it's kind of like a swimming cap that you put on your head during chemo. It freezes the hair follicles.
God.
So I didn't lose my hair. So that's quite a lot of the time. One of the questions that I get asked quite a lot of is, but if you had chemo, why didn't you lose your hair? So I always like to explain that. So I had 3 months of treatment, daily radiation, which was really challenging. However, there was always an end goal of a cure. Um, and then in December 2020, I got the amazing news that I was all clear from cancer and that I would then go on to sort of just 3 monthly follow ups after that. So went back to work as a nurse, was trying my hardest to get back into some sort of normal life. However, I was only 6 months in remission when I went back for a scan, and I got a phone call pretty much the same night from
Wow.
my consultant to say that they saw something concerning on my scan, and my heart instantly sunk, and I thought, this is not good. But yet again, very quickly, I went in for a biopsy, um, and even at the biopsy appointment, they were all very concerned. However, they were very reassuring. It's very unusual for cervical cancer to come back once you've had radiation, because the radiation kills all the blood supply to the cervix area. So I didn't have much there anyway. Um, and yet again, I then had a phone call from my consultant to say that she needed to see me face to face and for me to bring my mum in with me. And as soon as you hear them words, you know it's not going to be good news. I tried my hardest not to look at what the options were for a second time, so what we call relapsed or reoccurrence. I went into that appointment and was told that really my options were very, very limited, because I couldn't have any more radiation. It
Okay.
would only be what the terminology is palliative chemo. So it's chemotherapy that is there to prolong your life, but it's not there to cure. And at that stage, I had just turned 29. This was July of 21. And my consultant said, even with the chemotherapy, you'll be lucky to make it to your 30th birthday. And I remember just turning to my mum and saying, Mum, I can't die. Like, I've got so much in my life. I'm not ready to die. So we sort of said there's got to be more options, and the other option was major surgery, which came with a lot of risks,
Yeah.
and even the long term side effects would have been several organs in my pelvis being removed, which then would have resulted in me having a stoma bag, a urine bag, and severe mobility issues. And yet again, it was weighing up the options of whether that surgery would even be successful. It Thankfully for me, it was the best decision I ever made going for that. I knew that palliative chemo was not an option, because that to me was giving up, and there was no way I was giving up. So I went into surgery. It was 11-hour surgery. I was in hospital for about 5 weeks after. Um, However, it cured me. So don't have cancer anymore. However, the side effects that I have to live with on a daily is huge. Um, but the main thing is I'm here, and I can live as much of a normal life as possible. Obviously, it's never going to be what it was before, but I always, like I said, I try and make the most of it. And I know that my situation could have been a lot worse. So yeah, we made a big thing about my 30th, because we weren't sure if I was going to make it.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just think from that whole experience, I've just learned to literally live every day like it is your last. You can't guarantee that tomorrow is gonna come. Um, and yeah, I just try and, like I say, I just try and raise as much awareness as possible, just to make everyone aware that it really can happen. And like I said, even down to the relapse, that was, I think, the percentage of your chances of relapsing after the treatment I had
Mhm.
was so small. And like I said, even my consultant was like almost speechless, because she was like, I've just never seen anyone relapse after having radiation the way you have. And it was very severe. The tumor had actually spread from my cervix up, and it was wrapped around my bowels, my rectum, my bladder, and also my right hip. So it was quite extensive by the time we got to surgery. But the main thing is they got it all out. And in December 22, 21, sorry, December 21, they gave me the all clear. So I'm over a year in remission. I still have regular checkups, obviously. But yeah, the main thing is I am cancer free.
Oh, you're so inspirational. Like, you're so positive, and, like, even looking through your social media, like, obviously you're really into your fitness, your confidence, and I absolutely love that. Like, it is really inspiring.
So going to the fitness thing, fitness is a massive part of my life. I've done bodybuilding shows. I go to the gym every single day. And yet again, going back to the first diagnosis, I was concerned about my hair.
Mhm.
When I was then told I could have this major surgery, I was going to have, most of my organs removed from my pelvis. I was going to have mobility issues. And I just remember thinking, I'm not going to be able to go to the gym.
Yeah.
In all of this, I've literally been told I've probably got 9 months to live, and all I'm thinking in my head was, I can't go to the gym. And the first thing I said, obviously I don't remember, but the surgeon said that the first thing when I woke up, when I came round, the first thing I asked my surgeon was, can I still leg press in the gym?
I
That
love
was the
that
first
though.
thing I asked.
But I do feel like the gym is a massive mental health thing though. Like, it
Yeah,
makes mental health so much better. So I can see why you
yeah,
would feel like losing that would be a big loss, because even for me,
absolutely.
like, I find it such a clearing thing. So I get why
Yeah.
it's so important
It's
to you.
it's 100% got the gym, any sort of fitness related activities has 100% got me through the hardest times of my life. And like I said, I would be mentally a lot worse off if I didn't have that outlet. Um, so yeah, for me, it's not just all about going to the gym and looking a certain way. For me, it was 100% about my mental health. And I remember just thinking to myself, I think I'd go crazy if I could never walk into a gym ever again. And then the fact that 3 months after having this major surgery, I got the all clear from cancer. But more importantly, my consultant was like, you can go back to the gym. And I was like,
2
oh my
leg
God,
press.
that is, yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
She was like, take it easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like you say, things like that, everyone is so individual. But for me, that is a massive part of my life, my identity, but it's also how I, cope with things. And like I said, all them all them really bad moments, all them really bad like decisions and everything like that that I had to take on, I just remember always being like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and clear my head now. So exactly what you said, it's a lot to do with mental health and how I deal. It's my coping mechanism, really.
Yeah. I think your body has been through so much, and still to be so positive, going to the gym, looking after yourself is so amazing, and also really important, I think, to share that with others as well. Not just with people that I'm encouraging people, yes, to have this meal, but speaking to people that are maybe going through the same as what you've been through, talking
Yeah,
to them, watching this could be really like helpful for them to like see
absolutely.
it's not the end, or see that put yourself into something like you did with the gym, like is really helpful. I think that will really
Yeah.
encourage you as well.
And I mean, I've always, well, say always, the gym has been a massive part of my life, even prior to cancer. However, like I said, since having all of this stuff done, having chemo, having radiation, having major surgery, having all these complications, I can still, like I say, I'm back at work as a nurse. So, there is a glimmer of hope that you do get some normality back into your life. But on top of that, I'm stronger now in the gym than what I've ever been in my whole entire life. I have quite recently done a 200-mile cycle ride to raise money for cervical cancer. And I
Amazing.
wouldn't have ever done that before. I've climbed Snowdon yet again to raise money for Joe. So, you know, it's not the end. And yet again, I'm not the only person. I have many friends that have gone through similar, maybe even worse journeys than me. And some of them are so inspiring. Like I said, it doesn't mean it's the end for you. Obviously, there are certain things that will never go back to normal. However, if anything, like I said, if anything, it's made me so determined to do things. And, just one example, I am absolutely petrified of heights. However, I've done a zip wire because
Mm.
I was like, I, I'm not going to let anything stop me now. Like, I can overcome anything. So yet again, it's just really helped, change my mindset on life. And like I said, just grab any opportunity you have because you don't know what's coming around the corner for you.
How has like the experience changed you as a person?
So absolutely, the experience, or anyone going through any kind of health scare or health treatment, I think it does change you as a person. For me personally, I've tried to draw on as much positivity as possible. So like I said, I used to be quite oh, I can do that next year, or quite, whereas now I grab every opportunity I get. I'm like, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to push myself out my comfort zone. Just because you just don't know when your time's going to be up. I think as much as I draw upon obviously this whole experience, I try and use it as a positive. I don't, and that's what I said. I don't know why this happened to me. However, I like to think this happened to me for a reason. And if my reason is to come out of it to help educate other people, to help raise awareness, then that's what I'm gonna try my hardest to do. And obviously, I'm just super passionate about life itself, and I just, like I said, I just don't take a day for granted. But obviously, it's come with life changing circumstances for me. So the hardest part of this whole process was the fact that I had my fertility taken away from me. um like I said, I'm a children's nurse. I'm an auntie. I absolutely adore children, and I always saw my future having children. And to then have that option taken away from me, I think that's probably been the hardest part of this whole journey. I've had to work really, really hard with a psychologist to overcome how I felt emotionally. There were periods of time, quite when it was fresh on, that I couldn't even hear somebody talking about being pregnant. I couldn't attend baby showers. I couldn't be happy for a friend or a relative that had had a baby because it was too raw for me. So I've had to work really, really hard on that.
Mhm.
Um, but like I said, I try my hardest to see the positives out of everything. And you know, I don't know why. As again, I don't know why it happened to me, but it did. And for some reason, I was still put on this planet to help others. Like I said, I'm an auntie. I'm actually a great auntie now. So my
Oh
niece
my
had a
God,
baby.
right. Amazing. Congratulations.
I look after children all day, every day. I help so many children. So I feel in that sense, I'm just fun Auntie Destiny to so many babies.
Oh,
But yeah, like I always do try and acknowledge the fact that I'm not going to sit here and say it's all roses when it's not. I've had my really hard times. I've had my struggles, and I think for me personally, the hardest part of this journey was accepting that I don't have the option to have my own children biologically. And that's been something I've had to really, really work hard on to overcome, and to actually to sit here and talk about it. Yet again, maybe a year ago, I wouldn't have felt comfortable talking about it because it was too raw for me and I would have got too upset. Whereas yet again, working really hard on my mental health, working really hard with a psychologist has definitely allowed me to accept that this is what's happened and we move forward from it.
yeah. Well, earlier I used the word sad, but realistically, it's not sad, it's devastating. But
Mm.
yet you are so strong in like even speaking to you, it's just amazes me how strong you can be in such hard times that you've been through. It is, like I said earlier, inspiring. And that would be my next question is like, what advice would you give to others, maybe going through it or haven't gone for their smear or they're putting it off? Like, what would you say to them?
So definitely for any person that is putting off their smear for whatever reason, whether that be because they just don't know what to expect, or they just don't think it's going to happen to them, their schedules. I mean, yet again, I now hear other people say like, I didn't have time, I couldn't get the time off of work, I've got young children, I couldn't find a childminder. Life gets in the way, and I totally appreciate that. However, I just try and say to people, if you knew the consequences that of what treatment, you will then not have time to do all them normal jobs anymore, because you will then be in a hospital hooked up to chemo for 8 hours a day. So that's how I try and say I'm very sympathetic towards people saying I understand, but however, it's just about talking about it. If you're struggling with childcare, there's always a way around things. It's not ideal, I totally agree. However, if you ring your GP surgery and explain the circumstances, they might be able to accommodate that the child goes in with you. However, they might have another member of staff or something like that. It's all about communication. Any boss should allow a member of staff to have time off to attend a smear test, as it is a important cancer prevention screening tool. So anyone that gets resistance from that, there's always someone higher up in HR that will fully back you for that. So yet again, it is just about making your health a priority. I always say this: if you notice that your car light comes on, you take it and go and get it checked out. You don't wait until you're driving on the M25 for it to break down and then you have to call out the RAC and then you're screwed for the rest of the day. It's that sort of principle that you get a warning for a reason. And it's not necessarily that the letter is a warning, it's just an encouragement. It's just a letter to say, look, you're due to have this, and we should take up this offer of going to have a really simple, quick um, test done, which could prevent you from developing cervical cancer. And even worse, it can literally save your life. So that's what I always say to people, that if for any reason there's a barrier put in place due to time and stuff, there's always a way around it. Just communication is key. And also anyone that is like fearful. So I know people that have maybe had a bad experience, people that have heard other people have bad experiences. Yet again, if you ring your GP surgery and explain that you need to book in for a smear, however, you're extremely anxious, they there are things they can put in place. They can make sure that they have a larger slot for you, so you're not rushing as much. So you've got time to get in there and get comfortable. There's loads of tools out there on Joe's Trust and other platforms out there that give you advice on what you can do to help calm you, take music, stuff like that. Some people take a friend or whatever, plan something nice for afterwards. And yet again, making them aware of your anxiety around this. There's different tools they can use. They can use smaller equipment and stuff like that. So it doesn't have to be a negative experience. And yet again, I just think if you go in there thinking it's going to be a bad situation, it probably is going to be a bad situation. Whereas if you go in there thinking, okay, it's 10 minutes of my life, I've got this. It's like going to the dentist. I don't want to go and have a fill in, but I know I need it. And it's that sort of principle, isn't it? Of just thinking, if I go, it's done then, plan something nice for afterwards, and then it's done. And you can put that letter away, tick that off. And if the results come back all clear, you don't have to worry about it for another 3 months, 3 years, sorry. So that's the main thing, isn't it? Just go and have it done. Don't keep putting it off. The longer you put it off, the worse the outcome could be at the end of it.
Percent. No, I think that is very good advice. And like, even speaking to you, I'm booked in for mine, but if I hadn't, I'd have been booked in after this. It is so important because it, like you say,
Yeah,
it isn't long enough to like not go for. Do you know what I mean? If it was one of the things you were gonna sit and it was like an hour long thing, like it's 10 minutes.
absolutely.
And
It's 10 minutes of your day. And like I said, every 3 to 5 years is what they now monitor. It really can, like I said, it really can save your life without trying to sound too dramatic. If anything, it can save you from having to have the heartbreaking treatment that many of us women have had to go through. And like I said, and I'll say it again, I would take going to have a smear every single day for the rest of my life if I could undo everything that's happened to me in the last 3 years.
I can't even imagine what you've gone through. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like it just I want to try and like think like how hard it would, but I can't. I will never be able to, like, unless I'm in that position. I just think like a round of applause to you for how strong and how positive you are on life and outlook and everything like that because you have been through a hell of a lot, especially for your age.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I talk about it, I'm like, afterwards I reflect and I go, I was talking about myself. Like
Yeah.
I did that. I was strong. And like, honestly, you do not know how strong you are as a person until you are put in that position and you have no choice but to be strong. Um, so obviously I can't take all the credit. I have an amazing, I had an amazing team of medics that looked after me, an amazing hospital, and more importantly, I had my mum with me the whole time, as much as she could be when she wasn't allowed in the hospital. But honestly, like until you're put in that position, you do not know what you would do. And I just remember every step of the way when things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. I just remember thinking, can anything else go wrong here? Like, can it get any worse? And then it surprised me because it could. And but now now I've got through that. There were days that I didn't know if I was going to get through it. There were days that I thought, I can't do this anymore. Like, it's too hard. And like you say, anyone that's had to go through any hard times would know that feeling of wanting to give up. But yet again, it's all in your mind. So if my body physically couldn't do it, that's fine. But as long as I didn't give up mentally, I carried on going. And obviously, I'm so grateful that I never did give up because I wouldn't be here now. And like I said, I believe that everyone has a purpose in life. I always believed that my purpose was to help others as a nurse, but equally, I'm also helping others by
Yeah.
talking about my own personal experience.
No, it's really important. I think just what you're doing is like amazing, spreading the awareness because even though it's a really like devastating experience for you, you could be changing so many people's lives from going to get that smear early, getting checked out, and avoiding that end result if they just catch it a bit early or just be a bit more, what's the word? Like making sure they go and have their smear and not avoiding
Yeah.
it and putting it off.
And like we said as well, knowing the signs to look out for, knowing that we can't just put everything down to hormonal changes, stress, anxiety. Yet
Yeah.
again, if I knew all of that before, I could have potentially had seen some or would have pushed and advocated for myself to have seen someone a lot sooner. Um, but obviously, like I said, I'm me sharing my story, me coming on any, social media to share my story isn't going to change my outcome. And I have to accept that. But if I can, like I say, encourage, even if I can just encourage one woman to go out and go, right, I'm going to book it, I'm going to go, or all them symptoms, okay, I'm going to go and get that checked out. if I can get one person to do that, then I'm happy that I can share my story a million times over if it's going to help. Because, like I said, I never thought in a million years that I would be sat here talking about this as this has happened to me. So, yeah, I just think if I can encourage one person to go and do something that could potentially prevent them from having to go through what myself and many other women have had to go through, it's so preventable. It really is so preventable.
So that's kind of why I want to like use my platform, because I think to myself, if 1% of my following went and got checked out, that's a huge number. Like I forget like how big of a number that is. But like you say, one person is amazing. But I just keep
Yeah,
thinking 1% of the people that follow me, 97% are women, 96, 97% are women, 50% are in over 50% are in the age category 25 to like nearly 30. So I just feel like I have got the perfect audience to raise this awareness,
absolutely.
and I want
You
to do that.
your platform is the perfect age group for the people that I try and also target. So, like I said, up until this point, I always thought it was something that older women got, and I didn't know that it could. And especially, like you say, the age group of sort of like 25 to 30, even a little bit older, because we had that vaccination, we feel like we're safe. Whereas I don't know when exactly it started rolling out, but I think around anyone that's sort of 32 and older didn't get the vaccination. They're better at going to get their smears because they don't feel like they have that safety net. Whereas we fall in that category of feeling that we have this safety bubble around us and that we don't need to go for it.
Now you've said it like that, that makes complete sense, because we have that at the back of our heads like, well, we've had the jab.
Yeah,
Whereas, like you said, people older that haven't had it have never had to have that, like you say, safety net or comfort that, oh, well, I've had the jab. So I definitely feel like, yeah, the age range that are looking at my like stories and my platform are the people that are gonna watch and go, oh, I better not ignore that letter, or oh, has it been 3 years yet since my last one, or do you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
getting in there and pushing it. I kind of want to push it in their faces, a bit like, "Come on, not
yeah.
to be annoying, but it
And
would be."
exactly like we both said at the start, we didn't know really what the vaccine was. We just knew it was something to do with cervical cancer. How many women would open up that letter, read it, and go, "I don't need to go for that. I had the vaccine. Oh, they sent it in error."
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many women have said that to me, and I've gone, "No, it's not sent in error. You still need to go." But I had the vaccine, and I go, "So did I. I had the vaccine." So that's where I think this age group is so crucial to make sure that we get the message out there. Because first of all, people think that because they had the vaccine, they're safe from it. They don't need to go for testing because they've had the vaccine. And also, I think people just feel that they're too young.
Mhm. Whereas like you say, it could be any age. It's not cancer doesn't have an age. That's the like sad thing about it is everyone is open to getting it. So I just think if we can use that and push people, and a bit annoying. Like on the day of my smear, I'm gonna do stories and be like, I'm on my way to my smear, like encouraging people, and I'm gonna try
Yeah,
and be like as positive as possible. Like, because I'm not nervous about going. I feel like when you read things about it, I feel like, oh, maybe I should be because it's my first smear, but I'm not. Like, I'm quite comfortable going in there, doing what needs to be done, and leaving the room. Like, it's not. I
yeah,
understand, like you said earlier, I understand why people can be scared, and I understand why people's lives get too busy. But for me, I'm a bit like, you know what? I'm not bothered if it
absolutely.
could save my life. I'm really not bothered. Like it might, even if it was painful, I would still do it because I know
Still
it
do it.
could help me in the long run. So
And for you to share it on your social media and to show that it can be a positive experience, it's not as bad. And equally, just for you being open about it and saying, "This is normal, ladies. We all go through this. Let's all talk about it." Yet again, just that alone could save somebody because they're going to then go, "Oh, actually, yeah, I didn't go for mine because I was too embarrassed," or, "Oh, I didn't go for mine because I thought it was going to be really painful. But look at you, you're doing a story and then you're going to go for coffee straight after. It couldn't have been that bad."
yeah, exactly. I just think it's 2023. Why are we getting embarrassed or worried what people think? Like it's about our lives and we should be doing it
Yeah,
for ourselves, not for others anyway. So I think that's my main thing I'm going to be pushing. Like I'm there for me because I know it's good for me. It may not feel nice, but I know I need it.
absolutely. And crucially, to add for that, you are there for you but who else do you have that depends on you every single day?
Of course, my child,
So
yeah.
yeah, so you're going to make sure that you're there to be able to be a mother to your son for as long as possible.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. But, I'm, like, excited to do it and talk about it, though.
Yeah,
Like, why I don't wanna be, like, negative because then I feel like it's gonna put people off going, whereas if I'm as, like, positive, like, it's just gonna be a normal day, go into the see someone, get it done, and then I'm gonna carry on with my day as
yeah.
normal and just yeah, like, maybe I'll feel different when I get in the room, obviously, you never know how you're gonna feel, maybe I will get a bit nervous, but it will not stop me from kind of spreading the awareness,
Yeah,
spreading my legs, letting them do what they need to do, and, letting
exactly.
everyone know about it, but I'm sure, like, it is fine. I think I've had my coil changed twice, and, like, I think I was so like, nervous about that, and they were both absolutely fine, so
And I think as a nurse myself, we've seen it all.
yeah.
There's, and I think yet again, going through the birthing process, you realize that, you're going to have to do things that you probably wouldn't normally do on a normal day.
Yeah,
However, when you walk out of there, it's it's like that part is closed now, and it's the same thing. You go in there. It's okay to feel a little bit embarrassed. It's okay to feel a bit self-conscious. You know, that's normal. However, I can guarantee you that nurse has done that smear a million times before you, and she doesn't remember all of the vaginas she's seen.
yeah.
So, you can walk out of there and just think, I don't have to worry about that again now for another year to 5 years.
But it's been so lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for like spreading awareness and telling me your story and opening up because I do feel like even putting this chat on my socials will make a huge difference.
No, honestly, it's my pleasure. And like I said, thank you so much for inviting me on here. Um, like I said, I'm so passionate about sharing my own journey and raising awareness. And like I said, if we can, through sharing our own journeys on social media, if we can literally change one person's life, then I feel like it's worth it. So I'm just grateful that obviously you're going to document your own smear, and obviously hopefully that will encourage so many more women to go and have it done. So I can only thank you.
Oh no, you are so inspirational and amazing. Thank you for giving me your time and chatting away. It's been so lovely.
Anytime.
Oh, so
Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you so much.
And good luck.
Oh, thank you. It'll be fine. I feel
It
like
will do.
I should have butterflies, but I'm actually quite excited to have it done just to say, like, it's my first one, tick it off the list.
Took it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.